By late 1939, while a strange, deceptive calm reigned over Europe's land borders, a true and ruthless war was unfolding across the vast expanses of the global ocean. Great Britain, whose very survival depended entirely on maritime trade routes, faced a deadly threat. In the deep, cold waters of the Atlantic, a specter emerged that mercilessly destroyed British merchant vessels one after another. This was the German heavy cruiser, Admiral Graf Spee. The Germans themselves proudly called her a pocket battleship. This unique warship combined the speed of a light cruiser with the devastating firepower of a massive battleship. Her guns could rip any pursuer to shreds, while she could easily run away from a stronger enemy. At the helm of this iron monster stood Captain Hans Langsdorff, an experienced, noble, and exceedingly clever naval officer. He operated like a true corsair of centuries past. Since late September, his ship had sunk 9 British merchant vessels. Yet Langsdorff strictly adhered to the humane rules of naval warfare. Before every attack, he ordered the British crews to abandon ship and transfer to lifeboats or board the German cruiser itself. Not a single British sailor died at his hands. The cruiser would appear out of nowhere, deliver a crushing blow, and vanish without a trace into the ocean fog. The British Admiralty in London was gripped by panic, which quickly turned into fury. Winston Churchill ordered colossal forces to be thrown into the hunt for the German raider. 8 powerful task forces, including aircraft carriers, battleships, and heavy cruisers, put to sea. In total, over 20 warships scoured millions of square miles of water. But the Admiral Graf Spee remained elusive, like a true ghost. The Germans skillfully camouflaged their ship, altering her silhouette with dummy masts and funnels, and maintained absolute radio silence, denying British radio direction finders even the slightest chance. However, luck cannot last forever. One of the British sea wolves, Commodore Henry Harwood, commander of the South American station, employed logic and cold calculation. He analyzed the map of the German raiders' attacks and deduced his strategy. The cruiser, Admiral Graf Spee, needed fat, rich targets, and the most attractive hunting ground in the entire South Atlantic was the estuary of the River Plate, Rio de la Plata, a vast maritime gateway between Argentina and Uruguay, through which dozens of British transports carrying food, grain, and meat passed daily. Harwood made a crazy but brilliant bet. He ordered his ships to deploy to that exact location and wait. The British Commodore had no giant battleships at his disposal. His forces, known as Force G, consisted of just 3 cruisers: the heavy cruiser, HMS Exeter, and 2 light cruisers, HMS Ajax and HMS Achilles. Together, they were significantly outmatched by the German giant in firepower. The heavy guns of the Admiral Graf Spee fired 300-kilogram shells over a distance of up to 30 kilometers. A single such shell could instantly send any of the British cruisers to the bottom. On paper, this engagement looked like guaranteed suicide for the British. But Harwood devised an audacious plan. Split his forces into 2 groups, attack the Germans simultaneously from different directions, divide the fire of her main battery, and use speed and maneuverability to close into torpedo range. The dawn of December 13th, 1939, found the British squadron in their designated sector off the coast of Uruguay. At 6:14 a.m., a lookout aboard the cruiser Exeter spotted a thin plume of smoke on the horizon. Within minutes, the silhouette of a gigantic ship became clear. The alarm blared across battle stations. It was her. Hitler's Iron Hunter had finally fallen into the trap. Captain Langsdorff on the bridge of the German battleship also spotted the enemy. His cryptanalysts mistakenly assumed they were facing just 1 light cruiser and 2 escort destroyers. instead of exploiting his advantage in gun range and calmly destroying the enemy from afar. Langsdorff made a fatal mistake. He ordered the ship to put on speed and close, directly with the British. The German captain took his first step toward catastrophe. By around 8 a.m., the battle began to subside. Both sides had sustained horrific damage. The British Exeter turned into a burning ruin with no operational guns and barely staying afloat, began to limp south toward the Falkland Islands on Harwood's orders. Ajax had lost most of her combat capability, and ammunition on the ships was running critically low. The British Commodore knew that continuing an open artillery duel in broad daylight was certain death. He ordered his 2 light cruisers to drop back to a safe distance, but not to lose sight of the German. They began their shadow. Then the unexpected happened, something the British least anticipated. The Admiral Graf Spee, which still retained full cruising speed, possessed functioning main battery artillery, and could have easily finished off the wounded British squadron, suddenly ceased firing. Instead of pursuing the damaged British ships, the German vessel turned away and headed west at high speed, straight toward the neutral Uruguayan port of Montevideo. Captain Langsdorff had been severely concussed in the battle and sustained several shrapnel wounds. His psychological state was shattered. He looked at his shrapnel-torn cruiser and saw that although the armor had held, the ship's fuel purification system was completely destroyed. Without it, the engines could fail in the middle of the ocean. The ship's galley was also wrecked, and holes yawned in the hull. Langsdorff decided that his ship would not survive the long transit back to Germany across a stormy Atlantic without repairs. When the Admiral Graf Spee entered the neutral waters of Uruguay, the British realized the game was shifting to a new intellectual and psychological level. The German predator had driven itself into a trap from which neutral international law gave it only a few days to escape. At 6:17 a.m., the German pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee opened fire first. Her main battery guns unleashed 300-kilogram shells at the flagship of the British group, the heavy cruiser HMS Exeter. The ocean surface shuddered, and gigantic geysers of water, as tall as multi-story buildings, erupted around the British ship. Commodore Henry Harwood immediately executed his daring plan to split the enemy's fire. Exeter turned sharply to the west, drawing the full weight of the blow upon herself, while the light cruisers Ajax and Achilles dashed forward from the other side, flanking the German. The German captain, Hans Langsdorff, quickly realized he was being attacked from 2 different directions, but it was already too late. The minutes that followed turned into a literal artillery hell. The shells from the Graf Spee began tearing Exeter apart with horrific precision. One of the German shells pierced the deck and detonated right inside the forward gun turret, instantly killing its entire crew. Shrapnel swept the bridge, killing almost everyone present. The captain of the Exeter miraculously survived and was forced to command the shattered ship from the aft steering station, via a human chain of sailors, passing orders by voice. A fierce fire broke out on the British cruiser. The vessel began listing heavily, and her communication and fire control systems failed. Yet, bleeding and burning, Exeter continued to fight back, launching torpedoes and firing shells at the German giant. At that very moment, the light cruisers Ajax and Achilles closed to a dangerously short distance from the Graf Spee. Their rapid-fire guns subjected the Germans to a veritable hailstorm of steel. Small but frequent shells riddled the upper works of the German ship, destroyed anti-aircraft mounts, severed fuel lines, and torn the ship's hospital to shreds. Langsdorff found himself in a critical situation. The fire from the British light cruisers was so intense and audacious that the German captain feared a torpedo attack. He was forced to turn his giant guns away from the nearly crippled Exeter and shift his fire to Ajax and Achilles. One heavy German shell struck Ajax, completely shearing off her two aft turrets and depriving the ship of half her artillery. When the Admiral Graf Spee dropped anchor in the port of Montevideo, international law started its relentless clock. According to the Hague Convention, a warship of a belligerent state could remain in a neutral port for no more than 24 hours. A longer stay was permitted only to repair damage necessary for safe navigation, but under no circumstances to restore combat capability. Captain Hans Langsdorff demanded 2 weeks for repairs from the Uruguayan government. British diplomacy and intelligence instantly launched a subtle, sophisticated psychological operation. The British faced a paradoxical challenge. They needed to keep the German cruiser in port as long as possible to buy time. The reality was that outside the River Plate estuary, only Harwood's 2 battered light cruisers, Ajax and Achilles, lay in wait for Langsdorff. Reinforcements from the Royal Navy were thousands of miles away from Uruguay. The heavy cruiser HMS Cumberland was racing at full speed from the Falkland Islands, while the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal and the battle cruiser HMS Renown had only just departed ports in South Africa. The British resorted to a massive campaign of disinformation. Over open radio channels, which they knew the Germans were monitoring, British radio operators began transmitting fabricated coded messages, discussing the coordinates of a supposedly already arrived powerful squadron at the River Plate. Simultaneously, British agents in Montevideo actively spread rumors that the harbor exit was completely sealed by British capital forces. When the Uruguayan authorities, under pressure from British protests, issued a harsh ultimatum to Langsdorff: leave the port within 72 hours or face internment. The German captain found himself under immense psychological pressure. Langsdorff stood on the bridge of his ship and scanned the horizon through his optics. He hallucinated the massive masts of a British battleship and the silhouette of an aircraft carrier in the distance. It was an illusion born of exhaustion and the masterful British bluff. But the captain believed it. He dispatched a coded wire to Berlin, directly to Hitler, describing a hopeless situation. An attempt to break through such a squadron would mean the guaranteed destruction of the ship and her entire crew. Langsdorff categorically refused to lead his men to slaughter and proposed scuttling the cruiser right in the river estuary. Hitler's response was dry and brutal. Fight to the last shell, but if escape is impossible, destroy the ship to prevent her capture by the enemy.